How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another Master Mentorship video, and let's get right to the games. We're going to start here with a game sent in from Debbie. So let's take a look. You've got the black pieces here. Let's flip this around. Okay, your second game playing 15-10. Let's see how it goes. All right, so we get a typical Giocco Pianissimo. Okay, white's just playing knight c3, d6, bishop g5. Okay, so a totally symmetrical kind of situation here. Bishop h4, bishop g4. Yeah, you even mentioned it, very symmetrical. I think it's okay for you, though. I feel like white doesn't really get much playing this way, but I guess as black, you can't really be upset if you get equality with black. Kind of curious how often this has been played. Yeah, not very much, but there have been some top-level games in this line. Okay, white now plays knight d5, trying to go after this pinned knight. And yeah, I think this is where having played h6 is kind of valuable here, because we have this choice to play g5 if we want to. And yeah, I think it makes sense, especially because this knight's pinned, so white can't really go for any of the sacrifice ideas. Okay, g5. And now this bishop is kind of out of play, right? Often white doesn't want the bishop here when black has the pawns on d6 and e5. There are some exceptions, of course, maybe if black can open the center somehow, but very often, if this happens, this bishop doesn't do a whole lot. Especially because you haven't even committed to castling short yet. You could even castle long, in some cases. So let's see, you're thinking of how to deal with white's threats. I'm not sure they have any threats. What's their threat? I don't really see any. None of this is a threat. If you take on d5, we'll take back with the bishop. No, I don't like bishop d7. You don't have to take on d5 at all. Knight d4, yeah, this makes sense. I mean, this knight's pinned. They didn't play h3. They can't really break the pin. Their bishop's out of the pawn chain. I think black's just much better here, I feel. Maybe that's over-optimistic, because white hasn't castled short yet either. So, okay, we double their pawns, I guess. But, not the end of the world for white, but I certainly think I'd rather be black here, at least I would think so. So let's see, play bishop h3 to stop castling. White tries to play d4 to open up the center. Okay, takes. And you said you feel like you're in a tough spot. So what did you play here? You played, well, I really don't like meeting an attack with a counterattack if we can help it, unless we're sure it's safe. Well, this for sure is not safe, right? White just takes, and the game's over. Right, so let me see your comment here. You feel like you're in a bit of a tough spot. Your queen is protecting both the knight and the c1 pawn. Okay, or the c7 pawn, I guess. The bishop on c5 is under attack. The f7 pawn's indirectly under attack. Not really. I mean, the bishop's never going to take it unless there's some follow-up, right? So these are all, like, generalities, right? But then you actually have to calculate your candidate moves. Okay, you said maybe the best move is knight takes d5. You give some calculation there. I mean, yeah, this looks definitely better for you than the game if you can play bishop b4 check. You would also have to calculate, of course, what if they meet knight takes d5 with d takes c5. You have to consider all their checks, captures, and threats. But you certainly can't just allow knight takes f6 like this. I've said many times, always be very, very careful when you have a piece under attack and you try to meet it with a counterattack, because there's all kinds of in-between moves to calculate. You have to calculate d takes c5. You have to calculate knight takes f6. You have to calculate weird stuff like knight c7 that white can get away with now, because after you take, your bishop's still hanging. The calculation becomes much, much harder when you try to meet an attack with a counterattack, and you have to be 1,000% sure it's safe to ever do that. So let's see. So, okay, white finds the tactic. They just trade off the knight, and they take on c5. Okay, yeah, you are lost here. There's no way black should be able to save this game, but let's see how the game goes. So, okay, you win a pawn for it at least. Okay. Okay, oh, and okay. Yeah, I was just thinking, even though white can't castle, there shouldn't be a way that we can salvage this. We only have, 2 rooks and a bishop on the board in addition to the queen. I don't think we're going to mate the king here. And, yeah, white seems totally safe. They have 2 bishops, an extra piece. Let's see, if you could take the pawn on f3 and maybe use the queen and bishop to capture the rook with check. Well, I think white can defend that pretty easily. Okay, they do. I like not trading queens. Okay, they grab a pawn. Did they just hang a bishop, or what's the situation there? Okay, I guess white just totally forgot to defend their bishop. So, okay, we're back in the game. Yeah, like you said, only down a pawn. Okay, and now check. And we have opposite bishops now. Now we're playing this opposite color bishop middle game. So let's see how this goes. Queen a4 check, check. And you said you're okay trading queens here because you can pick up the f3 pawn. Yeah, I think that makes some sense. So, okay, equal material. This pawn's a bit scary. White has connected passed pawns. We have a 3-on-1 majority. I feel like their connected passed pawns are more valuable, though, because we can't push our majority too easily without exposing our king. So I'm kind of curious how White's gonna handle this. I mean, if White could just roll these pawns, they'd probably be winning. We control the white squares, though, pretty well, and it's very hard for White to ever kick us off of those squares, because, again, there's this opposite color bishop dynamic. It's very hard to ever interrupt this light squared bishop if White only has the dark squared bishop. Meanwhile, come to think of it, White can't really stop our pawns too easily from rolling forward with their bishop because, I mean, it's kind of restrained over here. I guess they could bring it back to, like, e5, but then f2 is a big problem, right? They have this backwards pawn on an open file. So, okay, it'll be interesting to see how this goes. Always have to be really aware of those pawn majorities, especially as you transition into an endgame. Okay, I like it, trying to roll it. And d7, what's that about? Yeah, okay, yeah, your opponent's just not thinking. Yeah, apparently not. Yeah, now you're definitely better. Much better. Probably winning. Okay, so the one thing, you have to be careful trading off the rooks, because the pure opposite bishop ending is one of the most drawish endgames in chess, because White can try to blockade the dark squares and you can never kick them off. But that said, we are up a pawn. We do have a 3-on-1 majority. I think we have good winning chances here. Now, it sounds like from your annotations that time trouble seems to be an issue here. So I would maybe try to play longer games. 15-10 is still a bit on the short side. I know you said you usually play daily games. That's fine. If you want to play live games, I would try to aim for longer. But you can play 15-10 if you want. I would rather play like 30-10 or 45-45. But okay, let's see. So the rest is going to be a time scramble. Okay, White's just throwing away their pawns like crazy. Okay. Okay, and this should be a win. Just making sure. Nice rolling rooks. Checkmate. Yeah, nice job. So, okay, you blundered the piece early, then White decided to, like, give you 5 blunders in return and kind of made it up to you. I think the biggest learning moment of the game is that blunder. Like, all the positional stuff in the opening, that's fine. Those are all, like, minor decisions, probably minor impacts on the game. This is the kind of stuff that wins and loses games. This moment, where is it? I'm trying to find the right moment. Right here, right? Because we're throwing away a whole piece when we play c6. So I'm trying to see your thought process here. It sounds like you already felt desperate. You were kind of dismissing your other options because of these superficial considerations, like, oh, f7, could potentially be indirectly a target somehow. So when you settled on c6, between the moment when you decided to play c6 and when you physically played c6, did you ask yourself for all of your opponent's possible checks, captures, threats, and how you would respond to each one? Because my guess is probably not, because I don't think it's too hard to consider knight takes f6. It comes with check, right? So it's definitely falls into that check, capture, or threat category. So really make sure every single turn, you have to do this every turn until it becomes almost automatic, subconscious. Between deciding on your move and physically playing the move, you have to consider all of your opponent's possible checks, captures, and threats in response. And I know that's easier said than done, and especially in a 15-10 game. Like I said, it's probably too short to do that every single turn, but really build up that habit, and it's really going to pay off. I think that habit alone is probably worth hundreds of rating points to most players. But yeah, thanks for the game, and nice win in the end. Next up, let's take a look at a game here from Peter F. So you have, I think you have the white pieces here, playing a King's Gambit. Okay, this all looks reasonable. I'm not sure about this response from black. I feel like they just, gave you the full center for nothing. So you can be happy here. So now b5, c5, interesting. So they're trying to strike back at your center, and yeah, so c4 does seem like an issue here, right? We don't want to allow c4 and have our bishop kind of be sidelined. So I think I agree with your note here that taking on c5 and then playing bishop d5 definitely makes sense, kind of forcing white to exchange, and okay, you lose the pair of bishops, but you're very, very active here. I mean, knight c7 could be an idea, bishop c7 is a possibility in some lines, you have the open f file, you could swing the queen into the game somehow. White seems, to have a pretty good position here. But okay, you play a3. Good job, avoiding the bishop trap, but it is still pretty bad to have the bishop sidelined like this. Okay, queen b6, queen d2, wanting to connect the rooks. Okay, fine. Sure. They have a lot of pressure here on d4. Okay, we defend it. Good. Oh, you make a note here that knight d5. Okay, let's see. So knight d5 takes. Oh, I see. You're saying black can't take because now the knight and the bishop are both under attack. But black doesn't have to take, do they? I guess you mentioned... Oh, I see. You say, okay, so they can't take, but then you would at least pick up the bishop pair, is what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense. Again, what is this exactly? Is this a thought you had during the game and you rejected it? Is this what a computer told you? Or, what's going on here? How did you find this after the game but not during the game? I think is an important thing to kind of ask yourself. So let's see. Queen d8, h3. Yeah, what's this? This is gonna lose a pawn, right? Knight takes e4, and the knight's under attack. So, okay, knight takes e4, takes. I kind of feel like a lot of your annotations here is like from the perspective of like a disconnected like spectator almost. I'm not really seeing too much of your actual thoughts behind the moves. I'm just saying that you state facts, right? Okay, a blunder's a pawn. Okay, black misses a chance to recover. You won the exchange, causing black to resign. So what caused you to play knight h4, I guess, is the more interesting aspect, at least to me, so I can kind of coach you through the thought process and, how to fix that. Were you playing too fast? Were you not considering all your opponent's checks, captures, threats? More thoughts kind of from your own perspective would probably be helpful in the annotation, so I could help you out more. But let's see. Okay, getting the bishop back into the game. Oh, and now they just blunder the queen, right? They walked right into your rook, and you have a little discovered check. So again, yeah, I see that you missed it, but why? I think that's the better question. I know you found it after the game, but what happened here in your thought process during the game? Okay, so you play here. Okay, they still fall for the same tactic. It just works with the rook this time. Good job finding it. And this should be a pretty simple win. Okay, and I guess they just resign here after queen f2. Yeah, f6 under attack, queen's under attack, so yeah, black can't really save this. So yeah, nice win. Hopefully that feedback was helpful. All right, next up we have a couple games here from Aaron B. Okay, you have the white pieces here. Okay, nice, a member versus member game. All right, so you said you're still iffy on openings. You're using threat, capture, threat, and calculating for now. Yeah, you have to calculate every turn, whether you're iffy or not. The one thing is, always learn one new thing every game about openings. So if you've never ever seen this before and you're calculating on move 2, that's fine, but then after the game you have to go back, do your research, and make sure that you're not unprepared next time you see this opening. So you play bishop e5, you can look up my video on the Ruy Lopez. This is called the Ruy Lopez, right? Chess.com will tell you. It's right here. So go watch a video on it. It can be mine or it can be someone else's, and make sure you really understand it at a deeper level so that next time you play this opening, you'll be much better prepared. Again, you don't have to do a whole bunch of opening repertoire work right now, but you do have to learn one new thing every game, and Module 4 is really what's going to help you out with that. So let's see. Bishop a4, knight d7, d4, takes. So I guess here's a question. So if you're calculating every turn, if you're not going by any prior knowledge here, were you calculating things like what happens if I remove the defender and win a pawn? Because you have to know why that doesn't work, right? If you don't know why it doesn't work, you have to go for it. You can't just not win a pawn when there's a free pawn presented. And it only doesn't work because black has this counter tactic where they fork you right back and win their pawn back. But if you don't know that, then again, you would have to calculate that out, and I don't really see any mention that you're doing any calculation right there. So this is a capture, right? If you're doing check, capture, or threat, then I kind of want to see how you're evaluating a capture like that and why you rejected it. But you're right, bishop a4 is the most common move, but you have to know that, or calculate it, one or the other. You have to calculate it or know it, one or the other. That queen d4 kind of stops the remove the defender tactic. Okay, fine. Okay. This all looks pretty reasonable. Yeah, so here we're attacking the knight and we're attacking the checkmate here on f7, right? Now be careful of generalities, right? Trying to stay aggressive. What does stay aggressive mean? Again, think a lot more concretely. I really try to harp on this a lot in Module 2. Either the tactic works or it doesn't, right? When you play queen d5, you should be looking for your opponent's possible defenses to this tactic. So it's great that you see this potential fork, just like I did when the move first appeared, but you really have to consider all your opponent's possible responses. It looks like they have queen d7 here, kind of staying alive for the time being, although it is kind of unpleasant for them to have to block in the bishop. I just want to get you out of the habit of like playing a move and then saying, well, I guess it didn't work out and I didn't win anything. You have to know when you play the move, if it wins something or not. You have to calculate until you know one way or the other. And you can be wrong, of course, but you can't just play the move and hope that it works, right? So, okay, developing makes sense, I think. Yeah, okay, knight c3, bishop b7, queen h5, okay, running the queen all around the board. Lots of moves there with no comments. So let's see, you thought you would shaken up his development so I could go regroup. I'm not sure what you mean by shaken up his development. I agree that your position's, I mean, it's fine, you haven't blundered anything. I just don't really see the merit to running your queen all around the board. Again, when you have a lead in development, you really want to try to play up on that and increase it and blow the center open as much as possible. So I'm trying to understand this comment you made. The computer wanted queen f6. I'm not sure. Oh, I see right here, queen f6. What do you mean that you're underdeveloped? And why does queen f6 do less for your development than queen e2 does? I'm not really sure. I mean, this move at least comes with tempo, right? You attack the rook and force it to move again. Maybe you were worried that like bishop g7 would come. But I mean, if nothing else, you stopped kingside castling forever. The queenside's a bit airy already. Black's already pushed some pawns over there. And I don't really know why our development's any worse here than it would be after queen back. So let's take a look at the game. Okay, they castle short. You liked the lanes open on e3. Okay, fair enough. Okay. Okay, so you lost a pawn. Oh, okay, you win the a6 pawn back. But I feel like a6 isn't as valuable as e4. So this seems like a very big decision, right? If you were calculating this beforehand, that, okay, black can play b4, they kick my knight away, and they can win my e4 pawn, but then I win their a6 pawn. That's a big decision to go for that. Did you calculate that beforehand, or did you kind of stumble into this and not really even see that b4, let black wins the e4 pawn? That's my guess, just based on the fact that there's no annotation or comment that indicates you calculated any of this beforehand. When you played a4, did you calculate b4 as a possible response? I talk about this too, that anytime there's pawn tension, you have to consider your opponent taking, pushing, or maintaining the tension. So definitely b4 should be considered. It's also a threat, right, which falls into the checks, captures, threats framework. So I guess I'll ask, when you played a4, what was your calculation? What moves did you consider your opponent playing before you played that move? And if you don't have an answer to that, then that's the problem, right? That's what has to change and be fixed. You can never play a move in chess and not know what the opponent's candidate moves are. If that's the case, you're not ready to make a move. You just don't move until you know. If you do know, and you had calculated, the b4 option, and you evaluated this whole line, but you thought, maybe it's worth it for you to trade off a6 for e4, that's fine. I'm totally fine with that. I mean, I think I probably disagree. I think this pawn is more valuable, but you could argue you get this strong passed pawn now, and maybe that's fine. I just want to make sure you're really doing this every turn, evaluating every possible check, capture, threat your opponent has in response to your intended move before ever playing it. But okay, we trade these pawns off, and let's see how the rest of the game goes. Okay, knight f3, check, interesting. So I guess black wants to kind of expose us on the light squares, have us take, and then have the queen come in. It feels a little slow, though. Do we really have no defense to this? So let's see. So we take bishop d5. Well, the bishop's not safe on d5, right? So if we have to play that, we're just lost. We're giving black a piece back. Now we're not even up a piece anymore. We have no piece up to suffer for, as I say. So, I mean, what else do we have here? I guess we have king h2 to consider. But maybe then bishop e5 just wins, doesn't it? We don't really have a defense to this. That's, again, why you have to be really careful. I didn't see knight f3 when black played this whole b4 thing, kicking off this forcing combination. But that's why, if you calculate b4, you have to be really careful for going for these, forcing lines. This line goes, 2 moves deep. That's forced. The knight has to move. They take the pawn. We take their pawn. You have to make sure there's no bombshell waiting for you at the end there. And in this case, there happens to be. I think that is a kind of hard tactic to see. Knight f3 is a really nice idea by them. I just want to highlight, again, the importance of concreteness every single turn. But yeah, knight f3 seems pretty strong. Now, I guess we can't decline it either, can we? Or could we decline it? Did you consider king h1 here? I doubt it's very good, but we have to at least consider it, considering the alternative is so bad, right? And I can't quite see the finishing blow here for black, but I feel like this has to be very bad for us. I'm wondering, can they play knight h4 and double attack g2? Maybe there we play f3 and try to survive? I mean, yeah, maybe we have to go for this, considering the alternative is pretty much unsurvivable, I think. But let's see what happens. Okay, gf3 takes, bishop d5. Okay, but now we're down 2 pawns, our king's wide open. I mean, we avoid the immediate checkmate, but there's no way we can ever save a position like this, down 2 pawns and with the open king, right? So we'll just see if anything changes. Okay, we go to the endgame down 2 pawns. I guess that is, noteworthy for now. At least we're still in the game. Was there ever a chance to turn this around? Probably not, unless something changes. Yeah, and the game's over. Yeah, so I think that was kind of the critical moment right there. You allowed this forcing line when you played a4. I wouldn't focus too much... Hold on, let me find the moment. I wouldn't focus too much on missing knight f3. I think that's the kind of thing that happens, right? That's kind of a tricky tactic to calculate. I would focus more on the fact that I think you missed b4. I don't think you've even calculated b4 here, and that's definitely a move you could see and could calculate. Whether you came to the right conclusion or wrong conclusion about it, that's fine as long as you actually calculated it. That's what I want you to kind of get in the habit of doing right now. And then I'll just quickly look at this other game you sent. I think it's your game against me. The thing I noticed here, just taking a brief glance at this, you made some comments in the opening here that just this first comment, I guess. You criticized knight f6 here, and you said that if you're going to kick it back, you should kick it back with b5. No, that's not necessarily true. It's nice that you have this option to play b5 later if you want to, but there's no need right now to play b5. Knight f6 is the most popular move here. And again, you can always look up the opening after the game. Certainly if you watch my video on the Ruy Lopez, I can break this down for you further, why these moves are played. But yeah, this game was lost right here, this moment with d5. You said you didn't see that this move pinned your knight, and the price to be paid was high. Yeah, so it fails tactically to knight takes e5. I do want to point out, though, that even if there was no tactic here, you would have to be really, really careful playing this move, because white's castled, you're not. You don't really want to blow the center wide open when you're still 2 moves away from getting castled and your opponent's king is tucked safely away out of the center, right? That's very dangerous, kind of on principle, let alone the fact that it's just plain not safe. It just loses a pawn. Just wanted to point that out as well. And I think from here... Yeah, I mean, this is already very, very tough, right? Not only do I win, I guess I don't win a pawn. I forgo winning a pawn to win a piece. And after e5, I mean, I just win a piece. The game's just over from there, right? Not only am I at the piece, but you still have the vulnerable king in the center. And you defended it well for a time there. You ended up trading queens and avoiding the immediate checkmate. But you can't really recover from being down a piece. And the rest was, kind of a matter of technique. I was up a piece the rest of the game, and that's pretty much how that goes. So it's great that you focused all this effort in the annotations later on in the game. I just want to point out, like, the moment when the game was actually decided was really on move... where was it? On move 5. After you play d5, there's no way black ever saves this game. And that's kind of a daunting thing for chess players to kind of think about when they're first getting into chess. It's a lot more, unforgiving than most other games, but that's just kind of the nature of how chess works. So I would really make this your #1 focus right now, just before deciding on the move you want to play, and then actually playing it on the board. Make sure that you can name every single check capture threat your opponent has and what you would do against each one. I want to really kind of help you out by narrowing your focus a bit. It's great that you're talking about openings and stuff, and I hope my advice there was helpful too, to look up the video. It's great that you're talking about, positional play and stuff, but what's really going to move the needle for you is every single turn, before deciding on your move and then actually playing the move, make sure you really consider every possible check capture threat your opponent has and what you would play against each one. And I know that's hard, I know that can be tedious at first, but you have to do that again and again and again until it becomes second nature. And that will tremendously increase your chess playing ability. So I hope that helps, and as always, let me know if you have any questions. Alright, moving on, we're going to take a look at a game here from Pal, and I think you ran into the annotation issue. Chess.com's being annoying and makes you check a little checkbox now when you hit the download button, and if you forget, then it takes away all your annotations and replaces them with the computer. And I put a video, by the way, in Module 1 to address this issue, to show you how to get around this. It's not hard to do, it's just if you forget it, it takes away all your annotations, which is kind of annoying. But okay, I can still take a look at this game for you. So let's see here. And I think you said this was played quite a while ago. Looks like this was back in July, but I can still certainly take a look. Looks like we get a perk defense. You're playing the 150 attack, kind of, pretending the perk is like the Sicilian dragon, just castling long and, going for the pawn storm. So let's see how this goes. Now, my thought is that often after you play h4, black is just going to play like h5 and try to kind of slow you down. I've seen that idea sometimes. I've seen black try to delay castling on this line. Black has a couple ways to kind of, combat this pawn storm idea. Now, bishop c4 I highly disagree with. This just goes against the whole spirit of this position. Because we have to think about what black's trying to do, right? Black's going to be pawn storming us, too, on the queen side, right? So why are you putting the bishop on c4 and giving them extra tempos all over the place, right? Now they play b5 with tempo, and if you put the bishop on b3, they're sure to get another tempo with the bishop on b3. So yeah, I just don't really see any reason the bishop should ever go to c4 in this line. There's no pressure to get on this diagonal. Just don't move the bishop and do your pawn storm thing that the whole system is designed for. So let's see how the game goes. Okay, you do want to put the bishop on b3. Maybe there's some rationale that we're like, slowing down d5 or something. That's the rationale in the Dragon, by the way. And like the mainline Yugoslav Dragon, that's why the bishop goes to c4 to stop d5. But I think d5 is less of a concern in a line like this. And I think this bishop's just going to be kind of a target for black's expansion. But let's see. So queen c7. Okay, a5. a4. Okay. Yeah, I guess we can play this way. I just feel like we still have nothing going on the king side, and black's already succeeded in, provoking a4, and I think they're even ready to play c5 in the very near future. I guess even next move. Okay. Takes. Yeah, offering to trade queens, even that is kind of like a concession, right? Because now our whole plan never came to fruition. Maybe you never even planned the pawn storm. I figured you probably did, because most of the time when people play this way with like f3 and castle, queen d2, castle long, the whole idea is to play the pawn storm, play bishop h6 and trade off the bishop and go for the attack. But it just never really happened, and black's the only one having any fun here, it seems. But okay, let's see how this goes. Oh, and now we just lose g2. And maybe black can just be greedy and get away with that. Because we can't really use the open g file too easily. The king's pretty well defended there. Is that the end of the game? Is this really resignable? We're only down a pawn, right? So it looks like the game ended here. Oh, I see. I think the rest continues here in this note. It just happened to be in like a little note. So we'll keep going. Queen e3. Okay. Yeah, again, we just have nothing going here, and black's king is totally safe, and their pieces are very active. Okay, opening their bishop. Okay. Yeah, this is just really, really good for black. Oh, and I see the game. Well, okay, can we take here? What if we just take with the knight? Still not sure that this is resignable. It certainly seems kind of pleasant for black, but I'm not sure exactly why the game ended there. Maybe you said in your annotations, but then the checkbox issue kind of took them all away, so this is all I can see. But yeah, interesting game. I think, I hope that helps at least, my thoughts there on how to play this opening. Usually you want to be more aggressive there on the king side and not just let black kind of push you around on the queen side. I could certainly give better feedback if I did see the annotations, but I hope that helps. Feel free to send it again with the annotations if you want for the next video, or send me a different game. Alright, moving on. Next up, we're going to take a look at a game here from Lisa. So let's see. Okay, playing this knight c3 system, and you're playing this like, you've called it the Jobavo London, with like the bishop f4, knight c3. So okay, let's see how it goes. c6, e3. Yeah, the whole thing is like, I feel like if black doesn't fall for any of the traps in this line, like I know your whole point is to play knight b5 at some point. You even mention it here in your notes. And there's some traps black can fall into in this opening. I think one of them is if they play like c5 and an early knight c6, then knight b5 becomes very strong, and they just can't defend c7. So it's kind of like a little trappy opening. But the issue is, I feel like if black doesn't fall for the traps, then you just are going to end up regretting having this knight on c3, where it blocks in your central pawn here, your c-pawn, right? Now, obviously, some strong players potentially disagree with this. There have been some top-level players who want to play this knight c3 London system. I just feel like it's kind of more in the trappy category of openings than being a fundamentally sound system. But certainly you can get away with a lot with white. That's a very important point. Like, even if you don't get an opening advantage, it's not like you're going to be at a big disadvantage. You have the white pieces, so, I mean, you have a lot of leeway in what you do. Okay, yeah, normal development. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's double-edged. Probably it can be justified. I mean, black's queen has no entry point yet, so I don't mind this aggressive kind of expansion. Let's see how it goes. Okay. So what if black just plays h5? I guess you'd meet h5 with g5 and possibly even bishop h3 in some cases. This looks reasonable, I think. So let's see. You just play h6. And now you trade the bishop off. Yeah, so far so good. I see nothing really to criticize so far. I would certainly consider moves like h5 and g5, but I don't think they really accomplish a whole lot right now. g5 is just not really safe because of the pin. So okay, bishop d3, takes, e6, and castle long. Okay. Yeah, I agree that kingside castling looks kind of risky right now. So here, were you evaluating like the whole pawn storm idea with b5, b4, and all this? That seems like black's most natural plan, but they certainly have to deal with where to put their king. Like they probably can't castle short either because they've already played h6. So if they ever castled short, we just play g5 and all the lines bust open, I think. Yeah, I kind of like white's position here. You can even play in the center too. You can still play e4. I feel like black played kind of passively here, so I'm kind of happy with white's position. Okay. Good. Oh, I see. And if they take on f4, you were going to take with the pawn, not the knight? I feel like probably taking with the knight is better, but I like that you're not afraid to take on the doubled pawns and you're being creative. That's very good to see. I kind of see some of the logic there of these pawns being a potential battering ram against the king. But remember, black hasn't committed to castling short yet. Black can still just castle long, right? So let's see. Queen c7, g5. Okay, interesting. We are giving up control of h5. Let me see. This turned out to be a bad plan. Your plan was to bump the knight, which had nowhere to go. Well, it does have a couple squares to go to, though, right? It does have h5, d7. So, okay, let's see. Okay. I still think you're fine. I wouldn't criticize g5 too harshly. Okay, they want to trade off some pieces. I guess we're kind of forced to. We can't play e5 in between, sadly, because they take the queen with check. So takes, king b1. Can they get away with winning a pawn here? It seems like it's going to be hard for them to because of their back rank issues. Okay, they trade in the center. I'm trying to see here. Okay, you took back with the knight to cover the pawn on g5. Yeah, but like I said, it's hard. I mean, they could take on g5 right now if they want to do that. But I'm saying I think it's kind of hard for them to win this pawn because of their back rank. Like, they can try to be greedy and play this way. Maybe they should, as a matter of fact, because what do we actually do here? It looks scary for them, but I don't really see a great answer. I guess I'd take on d5 here before anything else and force them to give me more inroads. If they take with this pawn, then I'll probably play like queen b5 check. If they take with this pawn, then there's the e file and the h file to attack on. I feel like it's kind of greedy for black to play this way and take this pawn, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. I think I agree with you that taking with the pawn looks better to keep full control of the center and open up the f-file. So good job kind of seeing that after the game, though. So let's see, knight d7, black's trying to finish development. You should have taken the pawn earlier, as now he can castle and get his rooks connected. Which pawn? I guess you mean the d5 pawn? Alright, let's see how this goes, though. So you play queen a3. I like that idea, trying to stop castling, control the d6 square, and I think you still have everything under control. So it makes sense. They castle long. Wait, can they do that? Don't we just... Oh, I see. f7's defended by the queen still. Yeah, that's annoying. Okay, and you realize that too, so you take on h6. I feel like that just kind of helps their rook develop, though, so I'm not a huge fan of that, I don't think. Oh, and you didn't consider one of your opponent's possible recaptures here, I see. So after rook takes, you said you didn't consider the rook taking. Which, yeah, that happens. Everyone misses a recapture here and there. But wait a minute, isn't a7 hanging? I thought this move was supposed to stop castling both directions, right? Because we control a7 and f8. How did black... Yeah, how were they allowed to get away with just castling long here? Can't we just take a7 here? Okay, so I see in your comment you said... Okay, you saw a7 as hanging. You said you decided to take with your kingside pawns and break the tension so you can move the queen from guarding f3 and it can take a7. I feel like a7 is a lot more important than f3. a7 is really going to weaken the king's defenses a lot. If they take f3, I mean, I don't really care that much. They're just giving us an open f-file and it doesn't expose our king at all. Okay, if we take, we can even here just defend our knight, I think. Knight d6 doesn't work yet, I don't think. But what if we just defend the knight and threaten rook f1? And their king's pretty vulnerable now, I feel like. So I think this might have been a better option. Okay, in the game, let's see how this goes. So you let them defend a7. Okay, queen e7 still looks pretty promising, though. We're hitting a lot of things. So let's see how they respond. Okay, they just give us f7. In g7 too. I guess you don't want it yet, because knight g5 might be stronger. Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty good here for white. Okay, good. Okay, could we not play there? Knight f7? You said queen g6, you're threatening another fork. Don't we have knight f7 right away, or does this not work? Is there like an in-between move with rook e8 that you're worried about? I don't think it's a big deal, though. I mean, they have to try something here with rook e8 to get out of this fork, right? And I guess it has to be this rook, because the knights lose. So, like, rook e8. I mean, if nothing else, we just trade queens, and we're happy to go to this endgame at this point, right? Or we even just move the queen away and leave the rook hanging. That's an option, too. Maybe even, like, queen h3 here. Now, how do they defend the rook and the knight? It seems like we're just totally winning here. So I think you just missed knight f7. But let's see. Queen g6. Okay. Okay. Yeah, we're still happy to go to the endgame. Did you convert this? I just want to make sure you converted this. If you converted this, there's probably nothing much we have to cover here, unless it's... Well, okay, you're making this look hard. But I think it's still going to work. Yeah, okay. Oh, wait. No. Oh, no. And a draw. All right, so let me see your comments there in the endgame then, because that wasn't as smooth as it probably could have been. So let's see. So you're happy to trade down. This all looks fine. This should be a win. So where did this go wrong? Let's see. This is all fine. Okay, I'm okay with that. Okay, so, let me see your comment here. Now his rook keeps your king from getting involved. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of b3. Maybe it's okay. In fact, I'm sure it's still winning, but I feel like we're not doing ourselves any favors here by making isolated pawns like this. Why do we have to play b3? Just play f5 and kind of put the pressure on black to do something about it. That's kind of my thought. I know we have this 4-on-3 majority and we have to turn it into a passed pawn. Maybe we should have never allowed black to even play a5, a4, right? Like, why are we allowing black to do this to us? Here, for example, could we just play b3 here? And I think we can keep everything more compact here. I guess black could still try to play this way. I mean, they're going to get some pressure on us, but I think our king is able to kind of help out. Anyway, I'm probably nitpicking small details here, because I think we're still winning anyways after we allow this. So let's see the game. Okay. c4, d5. Okay. Okay, fine. And here you would have to calculate, of course, that this doesn't work for them, right? So, okay, we push. Okay. Is there really no way out of this? This is surprisingly difficult. I see your frustration now, because this feels like it should be an easily winning endgame. How is black hanging in there, down 2 pawns? Here it feels already too late, right? I mean, they're just going to march over and win this pawn. We still have to address their a4 pawn somehow. What if we ignore the a4 pawn for now and just march the king in? I don't think we can get away with that. I don't think so, especially because we have to cross the d-file anyway, so that's going to be not so easy to do. Surely, I mean, this has to be a win. We're up 2 pawns and a rook in game. What's the moment where we could win this? I mean, it might be a matter of just having the king play a more active role. That's probably part of it. I gotta hand it to black, though. I'm impressed they were able to defend this. What about here, for example, like b4, just like grabbing space and pushing these pawns and not letting them be fixed in place? I just want to play like b4, a4 if I'm allowed to, and start marching the king in somehow. I think that's one suggestion. I'm shocked, though, that this is hard to win. Is this already too late to win? I highly, highly doubt it. There's no way this can be, a draw. Okay, here's a thought. What about activating our rook? Because I know we kind of are following this principle of rooks belong behind passed pawns, but what leads me towards maybe activating our rook on the open files is black has 2 isolated pawns of their own. These can be targets, and the king's far away. Could we play, like, rook e2 and try to come in? I don't care if I lose the f pawn as long as I can win the c pawn, because connected passed pawns will win. That's a definite win. And this is why it helps, by the way, to have some kind of guideposts of what to look for in endgames from studying those basic endgames. Knowing that connected passed pawns are winning, and that it'd be valuable here to trade the f pawn for the c pawn. But I don't blame you too much for not seeing some of this stuff, because this is a surprisingly tricky endgame. The important thing is not to get caught in this trap of kind of thinking, okay, everything wins. And I kind of feel like, I don't know if that's what happened. I saw a lot of moves with no annotations here. Maybe missing some of the nuances here, move to move. Here it's already tough, though, surprisingly. I mean, we have these two passed pawns, but the king's close, which is annoying. And the simplified material gives black a lot of extra drawing chances here. So yeah, I think we misplayed the rook in game. This would be a great puzzle position. Just like right here. If you just want to set this up against a computer and play it over and over again with both colors until you can win this every time with white, I think that'd be a fantastic exercise for you and everyone else. Me included, because this isn't the easiest rook in game to win. It's kind of tricky. So whenever you misplay a winning position, that's what I always recommend. Set it up against a computer, play it over and over again until you can win every time. If you can't, then flip it around. Let the computer show you how it beats you, and then try to do it against it. Keep flipping back and forth until you understand all the secrets of the position. But great game there. Seems like you outplayed your opponent most of the game, and it really came down to not converting this in-game, which would be a very good exercise. Alright, next up you have another game here from Peter F. Sorry, I usually try to keep people's games together if they send me two. But these got kind of separated somehow. And I think you already got the majority of my feedback, but I do want to take a quick look at this and just see if I have any extra thoughts for you. So you had the black pieces here. Oh, you can't play that. You can't play d5 here on move 2. This is like the queen's gambit line with knight f6. This is known to be bad because white can just wipe out your center. And you can't do anything about that. Like if you take with the knight, they're just going to play e4. If you take with the queen, they're going to play knight c3 and then e4. Very important. You have to, like in the queen's gambit, you usually either accept the gambit or you reinforce it with a pawn. There are some exceptions, but knight f6 is not one of them. You just get your center wiped out, and white takes over the full center. Again, you can watch my video on the queen's gambit if you want more on this. Just type in queen's gambit chess pathways on YouTube, and I can break down some of your better options here. And again, if you want to play d5, just do it on move 1. That's what I recommend. There are some exceptions like the Grunfeld opening. If you want to play this kind of setup with a later d5, you could look up the Grunfeld. Again, I have a video on that, Grunfeld chess pathways on YouTube. But you can't play it here on move 2. This is very well known to be very good for white. But okay, white does not punish you. They just play g3. They let you defend the pawn. Good. c6, that's what you often want to play against d4, c4. Okay, all makes sense. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of just giving up the bishop for the knight unprovoked. I'm not sure what we gain by that, and you don't really mention it in your comments. Certainly not a tactical mistake. Oh, I see. You want to take on c4. Okay, if we're playing it to win a pawn, that's maybe justifiable. I feel like it'll be hard to hold on to that pawn, but maybe we can. Maybe we can. I just feel like white's going to attack c4, and then what do we do? If you play b5, we're really weak on the white squares, is the concern. But okay, let's see how this goes. So you want a pawn. Now they're going after it. And yeah, see, that's what I mean. We can't defend it, right? So in light of that, I'm not a huge fan of giving up the dark bishop. But okay, we're playing this position. Like you said, we have the Yaroslav pawn structure. Problem is, though, white has two bishops. So I know your typical plan in this pawn structure is to play c5 or e5. But now if we blow the center open, that could be really good for their two bishops. Especially, I mean, c5 seems kind of out of question. It makes this bishop so strong. But okay, let's see how it goes. Okay, so we exchange there. Okay, I like that, trying to put more pressure on their center. Okay, okay, you get e5, and that's one of the key breaks you want to get in the Yaroslav, and I think it makes more sense than c5, of course, because, again, this bishop. And yeah, like you mentioned, good time because the queen is pinned. Possibly, but I am nervous about opening this bishop up. The bishop seems kind of passive right now on c3. What if we just, well, we could play knight d5 here. Looking at it now, I think knight d5 is probably better because we get rid of their pair of bishops, which is nice. They can't play e4 because we just take on c3, right? Or I guess they could play it, but it doesn't win anything. We have knight takes c3. And they can't move the bishop away too easily because b2 could be a concern, possibly. Well, I don't know. Come to think of it, they could even, get tricky on us and play like bishop d2. And then if we take, they have e4, right? So there are some tricks here you'd have to calculate. Just a thought, though. Not sure if you considered knight d5 or not. I'm just not loving blowing the position open because, again, they have those pair of bishops. So I'm kind of curious to see how this turns out. Yeah, they have a very strong dark bishop. I guess they can't take this pawn yet because we trapped the bishop with b6. But nonetheless, it still seems pretty strong. Oh, but I see. You're pointing out here that they actually... So there was a double blunder here, actually. So you missed c5. Yeah, probably once you played e5, they should have brought the queen off the d file. I'm not sure what rook e1 really accomplished, and yeah, certainly here it seems like c5. Does it just win? I guess it just wins, right? They have no real answer to it. they can't really go for this, right? Because it doesn't work. We just take the bishop in the end. So yeah, sad, double blunder, of course, but it happens. Kind of curious to see how the game plays out after that. Okay. Oh, and they blunder it again. Okay. Was there any chance of not winning this? Just want to make sure. Okay, looks good. Marching the passed pawns. Okay. All right, yeah, nice win. I think there was that weird double blunder moment, and hopefully those thoughts about, not just giving away the bishop pair for nothing help. And the opening. I think the opening is going to help you out there, too, to definitely look that up. Again, learning one new thing every game. Definitely a big thing I focus on. But all right, thanks for the games. Next up, we're going to take a look at a game here from Dick. And you've got the white pieces here. So let's see how this goes. Okay, interesting. I wouldn't even call this a Caro-Kann. This is just black being weird. Like, they're playing a French defense, but they're not wanting to play c5 in one move. It's just a bad opening for black. Knight f3 is fine. When my opponent does something really goofy, I tend to lean on the side of grab as much space as possible, so I personally would probably play c4 or f4. But knight f3 is definitely a reasonable move. d5, e5. Yeah, I mean, it's not even a Caro-Kann. It's, like I said, it's a French defense where black is going to take 2 turns to play c5. Like, this exact position is a position from the French defense, except that the knight is usually on g1 still. So, we're just playing an advanced French defense where black gave us a free extra tempo. Okay, so black's trying to strike at the base of our pawn chain, or sorry, the kind of the head of our pawn chain with f6. Always kind of a double-edged thing to do, of course. Okay, b6. Okay, and you played knight b32. Did you consider here... I know often white plays like bishop b5 check in response to b6, trying to stop black from playing their bishop a6 idea to trade off their bad bishop. Here, I guess they're not even threatening that yet, though. They can't really do this yet, because we just take and fork them. Maybe you calculated that. But okay, let's see. Takes. Okay, they give us control of this great outpost here on e5. Yeah, I think he did you a favor, too. I think black's playing the opening very badly. Okay, bishop e2. Did you consider bishop e5 check? Again, I'm not sure what black would do here exactly. Probably just bishop d7. I was just wondering if anything here existed, like taking and queen a4. It probably doesn't lead anywhere. Or even taking and like bishop c6 in some case. Might not work, just good to at least consider it, but because it doesn't work, I think I'm fine with bishop e2. Although, maybe bishop d3 is better. Okay, I'm probably nitpicking here. I think all the moves are probably reasonable. Bishop e7, bishop h5 check. I see, you just want to play this to provoke g6. I guess that makes sense. It is kind of nice to provoke g6. Like you mentioned, though, I think bishop e5 check is now even stronger because they can't play bishop d7. But okay, let's see what happens. Okay. Yeah, bishop e5 is probably still better. But you just take and try to bring the other knight to e5. That makes sense. You pin the knight and try to prepare knight e5. So did you ask what would happen on h6? Always ask that, by the way. Whenever you're putting a bishop on, g5 or b5, always be ready to meet a6 or h6 in advance. But let's see. So they kick you away. No real comments there. I don't know if you expected that or not. Certainly seems pretty weakening for black to play this way. I think you've got to be much better here. Okay, they blunder a piece, and is that the end, or did anything else happen? I just want to make sure that you were able to convert this pretty smoothly, and you do. Okay, yeah, black just played the whole game very strangely. Their opening made no sense, and they hung a piece. So nice job. Yeah, bishop e5, I think you missed a chance to maybe improve there a little bit and find an even better option. But yeah, it seems like black played badly, and you punished them. Good job. Next up, let's take a look at a game here from Mark R. And Mark, I think sadly the same thing happened to you here, where I think you did the work and you put the work in and annotated the game. But then when you sent me the PGN, all I see is the computer thoughts. And I think this is, again, an issue with that checkbox that chess.com is being annoying and making you check when you hit the download button. I put a video in Module 1 where I explain how to avoid this issue. Very easy to get around this. It's just, unfortunately, if you forget to click the checkbox, it does this to you. So sadly, I can't see the thoughts. Let me know if you have any trouble seeing that video in Module 1 where I explain kind of how to avoid this. But I can still certainly take a look at this game and see if I have any feedback just based on what I see. So a6, I'd be a little nervous here that white can just take and then take on e5. Do people play a6 here in the four knights? Yeah, it seems like out of 7,500 games, a6 has only been played 91 times, and white scores very well. I'm just worried, like, what happens if they take and take on e5. I know in the Ruy Lopez, just to show it, in the Ruy Lopez, another opening, black can play a6 here, because if white tries to be greedy and win a pawn, it doesn't work. Black has queen d4, and they fork you and win the pawn back. But here in the four knights, I'm not sure that black can play that way, because there is no queen d4 in the end, right? If they play queen d4, we just come back to f3, and they can't take on e4, and white's just up a pawn. So let's see what happens. So black plays this, you do take on c6, but you don't take on e5. And again, I can't see the comments. I wonder if you made a comment here at this moment. But I think knight takes e5 is strong, unless I'm totally missing something. I guess there is queen e7, huh? But even still, here we could just play d4, I think. I guess there is some stuff to calculate here. What happens on like c5 trying to undermine us? But no, I mean certainly they're so far away from getting castle. We're just going to castle now, and I think white's much better here. Up a pawn, way better development. So I think we missed a chance here to take this e5 pawn. So d3. In general, I hardly like any e4, e5 opening where this pawn goes to d3. I tend to always try to put that pawn on d4 if I can. There are some exceptions. I guess this might be one of them. Although even here, if we're not going to take on e5, could we play d4? And I guess maybe even a better question, if we're not going to take on e5, why are we trading on c6 in the first place? To me, the only reason I'd ever want to do this right now is if I could win that e5 pawn. You could argue, you have the better pawn structure. But okay, let's see how the game goes. I'm probably nitpicking too much. Okay, so we're just developing. I think our bishop's kind of, out of play here on g3, but I think it's reasonable. Okay, we are allowing them to double our pawns if they want to, though. See, this is the thing. Whenever we play a system like this with e4, d3, we have all 8 pawns on the board. I feel like it's very, very hard to plan with white. Like, I'm not sure what white's plan should be here besides play d4 and open the center. So, okay, you castle long, they do too, and now I'm curious how this is going to go. Yeah, we can play moves like this, and, our rooks look nice on open files, but they're stuck behind these pawns. And there's no pawn tension whatsoever. These files show no signs of opening up unless we're going to play d4. So, okay, queen e3. Again, I'm not really sure what the idea is. Maybe to play d4? I'm trying to see if you ever played d4, though. You start, like, doubling rooks, but you're doubling behind nothing, right? You're doubling behind these pawns that are fixed in place. Maybe you're trying to very, very slowly prepare d4. I'm just not sure, though. If we're going to play d4, I would just play it right now. I'm not sure why we're, spending so many moves preparing it. Okay, king b1 makes sense. That's usually a good thing to do, but now we end up with double pawns. Oh, and they just give us the e5 pawn, right? Yeah, this bishop was kind of the key defender there, and even here, could we have taken it right away? I guess, king b1 is nice and all, but we could take here if we wanted to, right? We would have to calculate this line, right? Oh, I see. It probably doesn't work because there's actually a checkmate at the end because this rook is on d2. Yeah, if the rook was still on d1, I think this line would work, where we can take back and they can't take because the knight hangs, but sadly there is actually a checkmate because our rook is on d2. Again, just emphasizing how important it is to calculate every turn here, right? To see the e5's hanging and actually do the whole calculation to verify that. You probably did, and I just can't see it because of the annotation, checkbox thing. But yeah, if you saw it, that's probably why you played king b1. But okay, they don't defend the pawn, they give you the pawn. They get h3 for it, but of course this central pawn is way more important than h3. This is a great, great trade for you. Plus c6 falls, so okay, black just kind of played very badly there. Good. Yeah, this should be very good for you. We have such great pressure on the dark squares, the rook's hanging. Anything better than just trading knights? I just wonder if you have any better potential option here. It's probably reasonable. I'm just kind of curious how this is going to work out. Good, finally playing d4. Okay, why are we... Yeah, I'm just not sure about rook. Like, why do we want rooks on the d file so bad? That file is not going to open up, I don't think. We can't really open the d file. We can't open the e file. We could play like e5. Probably not now, because we're walking into like discoveries on our queen with bishop takes a2. Tactical ideas like that. But I think doubling on the e file and pushing e5 might make more sense. Only thing is we have to be careful of the light squares too. Again, it's this opposite color bishop kind of middle game. Always be really conscious of the color complexes when you have opposite color bishops. that could be a reason not to play e5. So we always have the option to play d5 and kind of blunt this bishop on the white squares. But okay, rook d1. Okay, we use that option to play d5. Okay, we play d5 and d5. Does this work? I think it does. I see no tactical flaw with it immediately. The computer says it's a mistake, but it also says that we're winning in either case. It says +2 or +4. Oh, I see. It says taking the h-pawn. Yeah, I mean, a pawn's a pawn, so that probably makes sense. But okay, e5, trying to blow the center open. Takes, and... Okay, it really hates trading queens here, which I guess makes sense. We have a lot of pressure here on, like, c7. So I guess going to the endgame, like I said, opposite color bishop endings have great drawing chances, just like I was talking about earlier in this video. So this actually can be one of those cases where simplification kind of works against you, even though you are up a pawn. I'm trying to see what it recommends instead. I guess it says queen a4, just, I guess, keeping the pressure. I'm trying to understand why it likes queen a4. I don't fully trust the chess.com computer. But I guess part of the point is it's not too easy to see how they actually defend their a6 pawn. Like if they play king b7, there's queen c6 check to worry about. And if they play a5, they're so weak, we can even play like queen b5 and start sneaking in, right? So yeah, kind of tricky to see. But I understand why the computer is saying that trading queens kind of hurts your advantage here, because it's much harder to win an endgame like this with opposite colored bishops, because black can just get such good control of the light squares, and we can never kick them off of it. But okay, black actually avoids exchanging queens. Queen e3, check, and a5. What's black trying to do? Yeah, and I'm trying not to get too distracted by the computer saying mistake every other move. Again, I kind of trust it when it gives such big swings in evaluation. I'm just trying to keep this like from what I consider from a human perspective. Like, okay, I see its logic if Wyatt wants the rook on b1, you know, open file and all, but I'm kind of curious what the actual decisive moment here was that determines the outcome of the game, because that's usually the most important thing. So here, rook e1, yeah, so by playing d6, I'm really nervous about letting this bishop get open again. Again, when you think about it this way, that these opposite colored bishop situations are all about these color complexes, I'm really nervous about giving black access to the light squares where they can coordinate with their bishop and queen. Because we can't contest that, right? Our bishop's totally out of play when it comes to contesting the light diagonal. So I'm really nervous about, you know, this a2 pawn, especially because our king's castled over there. So, I mean, d6 looks great if we can bust open the d-file and it works. I just feel like we're exposing our king more than their king. So I'm kind of curious to see how this plays out. Yeah, I mean, if we have to play that, then the game's just over, right? I think you just didn't really fully appreciate how these opposite color bishop situations work. This is kind of a more advanced topic, so I don't blame you for that at all. Just be really careful of those situations, because it can be very, very hard to contest the color complex that your bishop is not on. That, to me, would be the big takeaway here. And like the computer says, I think it said that by playing d6, you go from winning to losing. And yeah, there's just no way to deal with this. You can't contest the light squares. And okay, of course the game's over now. And black turns it into a win. All right, yeah, I hope that helps. Kind of a more advanced lesson there. Just be really careful about those color complexes and opposite bishop situations. Thanks for the game. All right, next up, we're going to take a look at a game here from Cullen. So let's take a look. You've got the black pieces here, another member versus member. Okay, playing the Italian. That's not too common from white, of course. I guess white just wants to stop bishop g4. Again, white can kind of get away with a lot. Okay, they're switching back to like a Giocco pianissimo kind of thing, not playing the early d4. Okay, yeah, just defending everything. You defend e6, you defend b7. Do people play this? I'm kind of curious if this is like an opening line. Where did you first deviate? I guess knight g5. Okay, I think white probably just thought they had a tactic here with queen b3 with a double attack and missed knight d8. So good defense for sure. And now we're playing this kind of original territory kind of position. So h6, you kick the knight away, and I thought you were just going to castle yourself. So you play c6 first. I see, you want to free the knight. And yeah, good comment here. You kind of got attached to this idea of castling queenside, and that led you not to consider castling short here, when to me, castling short just seems like the common sense move right here. I see no need to get fancy. Just tuck the king away and, get this nice open file for the rook. But okay, c6, rook e1. And you worry that white would play d4 here. Certainly that should always be kind of on the back of your mind when you have this, this pawn on c3. Yeah, how do we play here? Because if we take, it kind of hurts that this move comes with tempo, right? Because we can't just take and then try to play like e5 or something. Because first of all, we're still not castled. Second of all, this queen could be strong on the diagonal. And, you know, in the meantime, white has good control here of the center. We can't take on e4 yet either because this move comes with tempo, like I was saying. So let's see. So d4, or sorry, rook e1, knight f7. Interesting. So we're still not worried about d4. Okay. Oh, and now you do castle short, so let me see. You got scared for some reason after investing all the time. Okay, you got worried about white's queen staring down at the king. I don't think that's going to be a big concern. I mean, certainly it's an opposite side castling situation, so we have to be kind of careful. But we can be attacking white in the meantime. I kind of like this idea now that white has played... I mean, white has this pawn on h3, so it's kind of appealing just to play like g5, h5, and g4 and bust everything open. Yeah, castling long seems kind of appealing here, but I think castling short is fine too. Okay, and now d5. Can we do that, or is e5 going to be too weak? And I guess we're about to get our answer, because in the game it looks like white goes for this tactical line, kind of, you know, pointing out the rook is eyeing the queen, with takes and d4. So yeah, it probably wasn't great to go for this in light of that. Let me see, instead the following continuation... Oh, I think you're still talking about that variation. Yeah, it's probably not great to go for this. Like you said, you might have been overvaluing, kind of getting rid of your doubled pawns. Black's usually happy with those pawns in this line. You kind of intentionally went for them because they control all the squares so well. Here, I feel like this opening of the position kind of favors white. So, okay, here, it seems like we can't... Well, can we take on e5 right away? I guess we can, because they can't play f4, I don't think. Yeah, I think we can take back. Let me see your comment here. You were worried about rook a1, pinning the knight to the rook. Yeah, they can't play f4 here and try to pick up the knight. We have many... Well, I think we have queen c5. I was going to say knight f3, but that doesn't work, of course. But queen c5 works. And this would be very good for us, I believe. Maybe not very good, but it certainly doesn't lose any material for us. But yeah, so you missed that. You don't take the pawn back. You play queen f7. You try to counterattack f2, which also makes sense. But now how do we get our pawn back after knight f3? That's the problem. Yeah, now we have to deal with this very annoying passed e-pawn. White can double and defend it, and I don't see black really getting too many threats in the meantime. So, okay, knight c5 makes sense. Knight e4. Oh, okay, trying to cut off the coordination makes some sense. Maybe even knight g5 is the idea, trying to open up the f-file again. Probably not with the queen on c2, though. So let's see. Rook f1, queen f4. Okay, activating our last piece makes sense. Okay, trying to read some of the comments here. Let me see. Trading queens here is probably okay. You didn't like spending my move to do the queen trade. Makes sense. Yeah, I don't mind this king h7 move, just kind of staying flexible, and like you said, if white initiates the exchange, at least your king is more ready to kind of jump into the action and try to target that pawn. So takes, g5, okay, makes sense. Rook d1. Very good job. Notice how he's asking for his opponent's ideas, right? Very good lesson for everyone to learn, right? Cullen sees here rook d1, and he says, okay, the move's preparing to infiltrate. He looks for the c4 pawn break. Very, very important lesson there. Always ask what your opponent's move's trying to do. And always consider pawn breaks in general. So let's see. We're trying to think about how to respond. You thought about b5 to stop it. But then c6 could be the target, you said. Yeah, there's like knight d4 ideas in some lines even. Although maybe it's not that simple. I mean, f2 was kind of always hanging in that case, right? The other question is c4 really that huge of a threat? What if you just continue with your plan of marching the king in? And like, okay, so what if they play c4? We have many ways to deal with this, right? We can defend d5, we can take on c4 even in some cases. I mean, I know they can play rook d7, but is it really that big of a problem? I'm just trying to calculate lines like this even. It seems playable for you, for sure, something to calculate. So I'm not sure white has any serious threat here. But okay, let's see the game. So you play g5, rook d1, and now you play h5, just trying to play g4, kick the knight away, and pick up the pawn, I guess is the idea. So now white plays rook d4. I guess they have threats of like knight takes g5 here with this pin. So, okay, you defend it. And now comes c4 and g4, like you said, as planned. So you had calculated all this beforehand, right? Very, very important to do. So there's this whole forced sequence that you probably calculated beforehand, right? Okay, they take, they remove the defender of your knight, then you take their knight, they take your knight, takes, and takes. Okay, makes sense. So they have to move the rook. Now we swap off these pawns, and this is kind of the result right here, right? So what's going on? We're down a pawn. But it seems like we have decent drawing chances. I guess we were down a pawn all along after we kind of, hung the pawn in the middle game. But we do have an active king, and it seems like it's hard for white to defend the c5 pawn. So let's see how this goes. So b4, king f5. Okay, and we go to the pure king and pawn endgame. Of course, we have to be very careful going to this endgame because, like I always say, there's no such thing as a slight advantage in a king and pawn endgame. It's either a win, a loss, or a draw, and you have to know which it is. I think here, though, it's very hard to, seriously consider not going for the endgame. I mean, we win our pawn back. And like you said, you were very happy to get to this point. I think, you defended well, you lost the pawn early, you finally won it back. And let's see how this endgame goes. So my gut instinct is it's probably a draw. But of course, there's a lot of room for error in these situations, so I'm kind of curious how the game's going to play out. King e3, and you played king f5. So you said you miscalculated here. You straight up missed it after king d4, king f4, king d4, king f3. Oh, okay. You were calculating a long race situation. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, these endgames are so tricky because missing one little detail in one of those long race lines, of course, changes the result of the whole game. Again, this would be a great exercise, definitely for anyone who wants to set up this position against a computer, play it out for both colors. Great king and pawn endgame practice here. So I'm trying to think how to actually defend this. So after king e3... Man, there's a lot to calculate. It's not that simple at all, because if we just push, we're both going to end up at the passed pawn. Usually it's the outside passed pawn that's good, but here there's pawns on both sides of the two passed pawns. So there's a lot to calculate here. But I feel like not giving ground with the king is probably a good place to start. I mean, we can play a move like b5. I'm just kind of curious to see how this would play out. Like, what happens in, like, some of these race lines? Like, here the races look much better for us, I think. We're coming in very fast. Yeah, this looks very, very good for black. Probably a win, right, if my calculation is right. Here, takes, we get off. Yeah, should be a win for black. So here they couldn't go for the race. So what else? I mean, what if they just sit here behind their pawn? Then you have to calculate this whole situation. I feel like h4 is a good move here. That's kind of on gut instinct of having trained a bit in these king and pawn endgames. It just gets our pawn closer to queening, and this is kind of gonna be our outside passed pawn if we're gonna use this pawn as a deflection. And I actually feel like we're winning here, aren't we? There's no way white can defend our threat to just play h4 and then run this guy and then force the king to go grab it and then grab this guy and queen our h pawn. I think we're gonna win any race here. So, wait, does b5 just win for black? Certainly, I feel like white should have ideas here too. So what's going on? So after king e3, if we play b5, what should white do? Maybe just not play f4? Yeah, I think they shouldn't play f4 because it's going to be much harder for us to use this winning technique if this pawn is back on f2. Like here, it's not as simple to win the race, right? Because as soon as we go run around and try to target h3, then they can play f4 at the right moment and kind of force us to waste more time. So okay, there's so many nuances here in this king and pawn endgame. It's deceptively complex, and there's so much to calculate, and you have to calculate like 20 moves in advance. Again, great practice. I don't have all the answers here yet for sure. I would have to sit down for like 15 minutes and analyze this to figure it out. So definitely practice this against a computer. Maybe post in the Facebook group if you do some deep analysis of this king and pawn endgame. Because I think it's really good practice, for sure. But yeah, sadly, it seems like in the game you just miscalculated and went for this race. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about, going for the race with the pawn all the way back on f2, and here it doesn't work, right? Oh, and they even come back and kind of box you out. Okay, very cool. Wow, okay. I was thinking they were going to race the whole way down, but here, okay, they come back and box you out. It's a very cool idea there by white. Yeah, these games are so tricky. Tough one there. Good job fighting back in the middle game. It just came down to a sheer calculation exercise, which really embodies what a king and pawn endgame really is. But yeah, very good game.